awesome sprinkles.
YouTube, Awesome Writer here. This is going to be just a little bit of a free-form discussion on the Power Rangers franchise, just kind of riffing on some recent announcements, not about Power Rangers, but about other related franchises, and not necessarily what it could mean for PR, because I don't think there's any sort of concrete rumors or anything tying it to it, but what it could mean for PR in terms of the franchise if it was connected to this. So if you didn't see, they recently had CinemaCon where they announced a bunch of projects, and Paramount, you know, who does the Transformers movies and all that, announced there's going to officially be a Transformers G.I. Joe crossover movie, which was teased at the end of the most recent movie, Rise of the Beasts, and there's been rumors on and off, probably mostly like fan-started rumors about various crossovers and stuff like that. But this is the first concrete thing we're getting. We weren't sure what it was going to amount to. Like, was it immediately going to go into crossover? Were they going to do solo movies first? I mean, I don't know if they could bring a solo G.I. Joe movie back to bring hype for it. So, I don't know. It got me interested in thinking about Power Rangers because obviously ever since Hasbro brought Power Rangers, there's been talk of will they ever cross over with Transformers because that's their major property. Not to mention they're two pretty big, you know, not comic booky, but like superhero, not superheroes, kids brands from the 80s and 90s, and they both have robots. So you would think them compatible for something like that. And you know, I did a video, if I remember right, when this happened, when we got the cliffhanger about like, could they incorporate Power Rangers into this eventually with their plans for this reboot that may or may not happen. Seems like more and more likely it won't happen. Again, as I've said, I think the franchise will get rebooted eventually, but I don't know if this one's gonna happen. But what made me wonder, like, would a Power Rangers one be more successful? I've seen a lot of excited reactions, but I've also seen a lot of reactions being like, questioning like G.I. Joe's popularity. Like, obviously it's pretty well known, and I can't speak to everyone's experience. I can only speak to my point of view because I know G.I. Joe's a pretty big brand, and just like Power Rangers, it's well known. Like, I wouldn't say that it's like as well known as Transformers. Like, I think that you could probably find more casual fans that could list you 5 Transformers characters than you could list 5 G.I. Joe characters or maybe even Power Rangers. But I know it's well known, but I definitely feel like I was kind of two minds on it, to be honest. Like, on one hand, this makes a lot of sense, and I feel it'll get a lot of eyeballs of 2 major 80s franchises crossing over. But on the other hand, I thought, what if this was Power Rangers and Transformers? I feel like that might get a little extra attention, just because I think that Power Rangers is a little bit more well-known today, not in the sense of the modern franchise, but in terms of like the mmpr imagery and characters. As from my perspective, I feel a lot more people remember stuff like Tommy and the Green Ranger and mmpr than G.I. Joe stuff, outside of just simply knowing the name G.I. Joe exists. Now, also, it is an interesting time, whether you're talking about G.I. Joe and Transformers or Power Rangers and Transformers, because things have really changed so much when it comes to entertainment. You know, the Transformers movies in general had a pretty big boom when they first came out and have slowly gone down. I mean, Rise of the Beasts obviously did decent for them. I think they even said it did decent for them, but it wasn't as much as they would have wanted. It obviously did decent enough to pick this up, but it kind of came and went in terms of like pop culture and stuff like that. I know that it's like one of those things you have to make sure that people know you're cool by letting them know you hate the Transformers movies. But for the first 3 movies, I would say, they definitely felt like those part of the summer blockbustery event movies. Whereas, you know, Bumblebee was great and everything, and I thought Rise of the Beast was fun, but they both felt like they came and went in regards to the larger public. Like, I saw a lot more coverage on the first 3 movies. The rest of them have just kind of came and went. So in general, like, that franchise has petered out a little bit in regards to the blockbuster potential. But also, you know, in terms of movies, a lot of the big IP and event movies haven't been doing as well. There's a little bit fatigue for that. I have mixed feelings on that because I do think there's fatigue for that because I think there's been a lot of that content coming out, a lot of it mediocre, and also I do think that there's, not that it was all generated, but I think the fan hate doesn't help. I think that this toxic fan hate and wanting to see everything fail rather than have it repair itself doesn't help. But I think there's definitely been a decline in that sort of blockbustery franchise stuff. So I feel like, setting aside PR for a second, I think this movie would be something that would do a lot more, or at least assumed to do a lot more, maybe a few years ago before we've kind of had this decline where it's not just comic book movies, but a lot of franchise movies aren't doing as well as you would have thought. Thinking about Power Rangers, even if this was Power Rangers, it might not be the best spot for it. That's why Power Rangers is kind of in a tough spot in general with the reboot, whether it was coming out with a movie or a TV show or whatever. There's this really strange space right now where people are fatigued or being told they're fatigued at this type of stuff, and it's kind of white noise in a lot of ways. I just thought it was interesting though, you know, that Power Rangers is there and there is potential for that, and a few years ago there would have been maybe mega potential to cross over all 3 of these brands and see this kind of little mini universe. Everyone kind of rolls their eyes now at the idea of cinematic universes, but I'd be curious how it would boost the brands. It also got me thinking about like the public perception of the brands and how they're all 3 kind of almost on the sliding scale from each other. I think Transformers is the biggest one. I think much like PR is in right now, it's had quiet periods where the only thing you might have is some collectibles and comic books, but I think it's had the most consistent presence in the public eye. I think especially since the movies. Again, I know that it's cool if you hate those movies, but ever since those movies came out, it got a resurgence, and ever since the 2007 movie came out, it's had a consistent presence. There's always been a show on the horizon, there's been comic books going, there's been merchandise on the shelves. I can't remember a time there wasn't merchandise on the shelves consistently and with a decent presence since that movie. Meanwhile, G.I. Joe, I feel, is probably the most dormant in a lot of ways. I think it's kind of something that most people recognize the name, but it's only had a couple little movie attempts and stuff like that, a couple little spikes, but I think it's kind of in the middle of the road there. And PR is the most interesting one because I would argue, at least from my perception, that the iconography and the MMPR image and stuff like that, and when news comes out about something MMPR related, it's a little bit more well-known than G.I. Joe. Like I said, I think more people would be able to not saying all, like probably nerd communities, but I'm talking about casuals, would be able to list off more stuff from just MMPR. But MMPR is in this weird place where, compared to Transformers and G.I. Joe, again, I'm a Transformers fan, I'm not much of a G.I. Joe fan, but I'm casual Transformers in a lot of ways, so I can't say I've followed them every year. But from what I've seen and observed, even when the franchise are going, they've had quiet periods. You know, they have these lulls where it might just be comics, just merchandise, maybe nothing for a hot second. But Power Rangers is interesting because it's the only one of the three that until now with Cosmic Fury has been going the whole time, but going unnoticed, which is funny, because usually it's like, oh, Transformers is coming back with a movie, oh, there's a new series, or G.I. Joe's like, oh, G.I. Joe's trying to do a movie again. But Power Rangers has been here the whole time, but no one even saw it. I think the only real gap we had was between when Saban Brands bought it and Disney didn't have it, but even then it didn't feel like there was any sort of lull because of the MMPR 2010 stuff, especially with the merchandising. I mean, it's been a long time, guys, but I don't think there was a period of time between MMPR 2010 and Samurai Toys where there was no PR toys on the shelves. I think the fact that we had that line led to the fact that ever since it debuted in 1993, it's either been running in main form or there's been toys on the shelves, again, until now, which I find to be kind of fascinating. This also reminded me of something I thought about last year when Rise of the TMNT came out. Wait, that was the TV series, which is super underrated, by the way. But Mutant Mayhem came out, and I was thinking about how similar PR and TMNT are in a way, and yet Power Rangers can't get any respect, which is just funny because they both are mostly remembered for their cheesy childhood show. Like, TMNT has maybe the added benefit of the fact that the original was this more gritty comic, so people can draw back to that as like, well, it actually is adapted from something really cool because I'm ashamed to like anything. But mostly, most casual fans remember the 80s TMNT series and the 90s PR series. And obviously there's been more iterations. Maybe you could argue it's because TMNT's had more successful, mature iterations, but I don't mean dark, I just mean like the 2003 series, the 2012 series were definitely series that were leaps and bounds above anything PR has done in terms of shows that can be enjoyed by older fans. But anyway, long-winded point is, I find it interesting that like when it's TMNT, for most people that just remember those corny shows, but although, you know what, the 80s show, it is corny, but I was surprised how serialized it was when I finally watched it. Not like it's as engaging as the older series, but I'm like, my god, this is more serialized than PR. Anyway, I got away from myself multiple times. Point is, most people seem to only remember those shows as the cheesy show they watched when they were younger. And yet, when a new TMNT movie comes out, most people are like, oh, TMNT's back, I'll check that out. And when Power Rangers comes back, or you hear about like, oh, Once and Always or something, like, oh, Power Rangers is still around? Dude, that show's embarrassing. Like, it was awesome when I was little, but it also sucks. I just think that's funny. I know there's all kinds of factors that go into that, but I find it frustrating because I think PR has the potential to be a series and a franchise that you kind of think of like, oh, they might try a new franchise, I'll try this out, you know. Obviously you get the purists and stuff like that every now and then, but you know what I mean. In general, I didn't see any casual moviegoers or fans dismiss TMNT because they thought of the 80s series and blanketed their opinion across all of it. This was just kind of a free-form discussion on Power Rangers in regards to Hasbro owning it and its comparison to other franchises. I'll be curious to see what happens with it. The only last thing I wanted to address is I did see several people this last week with CinemaCon and the announcement say that Hasbro bought the brand on purpose so that they could kill it. Highly doubt it. That's such a dumb take. If that were to have happened, if they truly did spend all this money on Power Rangers just to kill the competition, although was Power Rangers really that much competition? Anyway, if that was the case, they had multiple times to kill it off. Like, if they wanted to do that, there was several times within, like, the main show's run they could have canceled it. I think specifically when they ordered Cosmic Fury, because Dino Fury could have been the end, and they pitched Cosmic Fury, and they re-upped, and they made the deal with Netflix. I think maybe even between Dino Fury seasons 1 and 2, because I think they only did season 1 because they were honoring their contract with Nickelodeon. So if that was truly the case, they would have honored their existing contracts and then just let it go. I mean, maybe they probably keep the comics alive because they want to keep a little bit of profit going and stuff like that. But again, if that was the case, if they had bought PR back and they had just honored their 3 existing series and then completely did, like, no plans, nothing, didn't say anything, and just let it quietly melt away, then I would maybe say there's credence to it. But the fact that they multiple times renewed their contract and then made a deal with Netflix, I mean, come on, guys. Why are the fans so dumb about this stuff? But anyways, guys, what do you think about Power Rangers, how it fits into all this stuff? Do you think that it could eventually work in a crossover movie? Do you think it could work to debut a new version of PR within a crossover movie? I highly doubt it. I wouldn't mind it. I wouldn't be as upset, but who knows? Let me know what you think in the comments as always. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell to get notifications for my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.